What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you in the early morning hours of Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. It's after 2 a.m. in the Central Time Zone, and yet I am still absolutely wired from Monday night at Busch Stadium because it hit close to home, and for listeners of the B-Schaeff Daily podcast, you guys already know what I'm talking about. Busy day at the ballpark. But Dylan Carlson was largely at the center of it all. And considering this is a hashtag Everyday Dylan podcast, you knew that that was going to give us a lot to talk about tonight on B-Schaeff Daily. The problem is the Carlson stuff came as part of a much larger dump of information from John Mozeliak on Monday afternoon. And I was doing my radio show, so I wasn't actually there for John Mozeliak, but we've got audio from Mo that we want to play tonight on the show because he essentially waved the white flag on the season, coming out and saying the quiet part out loud about where the Cardinals were heading at the upcoming trade deadline in much more depth and detail than we got when he had the interview with Martin Kilcoyne of Fox 2 the other day. There's a lot more going on here that we're going to have to dive into. Hear from Mo. I'm going to break down my thoughts on all of that. However, I want to begin tonight strategically by starting with Dylan Carlson and the news that essentially came out in the midst of all of this, that when Tyler O'Neill returns from the injured list, which is potentially as early as Tuesday, after he was at the ballpark Monday, getting checked out, possible they would send him back out on a rehab assignment, but John Mozeliak seeming to indicate that probably wouldn't be necessary and that he will be rejoining the team very soon. And when that happens, he's the starting left fielder again. Just like that, Tyler O'Neill bestowed a spot once again in the starting lineup. But what does that mean for Dylan Carlson? Well, not good things. I can tell you that much. Based on the way it broke down Monday afternoon, we'll read between the lines and give you our thoughts on exactly what it entails for Dylan. But then Dylan Carlson had to go and have one of the best games he's had all season long. Probably the worst thing Ollie Marmol could have done if he wanted this fire to go out, is put Dylan Carlson in the leadoff spot against the lefty and let him go to work, because Dylan absolutely went to work. He did it at the plate. He did it from both sides of the plate, and he did it in the field, manning center field, and doing a nice job behind Miles Michaelis. Cardinals win at Busch Stadium 6-4. Maybe I buried the lead on that, but honestly, with everything that John Mozeliak said Monday afternoon, the result of the day-to-day Cardinal games is no longer the lead when we're talking about the larger picture of this team. Waving the white flag, going into sell mode. He even said at one point, made reference to the 3 openings in the starting rotation. It was a question about next year, but he basically was being asked about what's the difference between last offseason when you tried to pitch to free agent pitchers, the opportunity available versus the opportunity that's going to be available this next time, and how you change your approach. He said, well, we've got 3 open spots in the rotation. I guess forgetting that Adam Wainwright's still on the team, but he's on the injured list, so that's fair. But Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty, those guys are on this team for now. But that's a peek into the mindset right there. If you want to know expectations on, are the Cardinals going to be looking to hang on to Flaherty and Montgomery in order to maybe sign him in the offseason? No. The president of baseball operations has mentally already counted them as gone. So I think they'll both be traded. There was a fellow in the comment section on YouTube yesterday who told me I didn't know what I was talking about. The Cardinals aren't going to trade Flaherty or Montgomery. Yeah, they are. They're trading both of them, almost definitely, unless something crazy happens. Montgomery pitches Tuesday, so if that hamstring doesn't check out, maybe that's the way he doesn't get dealt. But these guys are as good as gone. And John Mozeliak put out the decree on Monday. Pitching is going to be the Cardinals' aim at the deadline. But it's pitching not for 2023. Not to try and make a run at this October, but to set the Cardinals up as good as they possibly can be set up when it goes into the 2024 season. Honestly, going into the offseason ahead of the 2024 campaign, because John Mozeliak said we're going to have to be signing free agent starters when it comes to this offseason, but I don't think the Cardinals would do well to put it all off until then. They've got to try to find some reinforcements within the next couple of weeks and reorganize their roster to do it. John Mozeliak knows it. He talked a lot about it. So we're going to play a lot of those clips, like I said. But I'm going to be strategic here. If you're listening to the B-Schaeff Daily podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, you're going to get a juicy, fat episode tonight. I'm sure it's going to be well over an hour long. I will probably be recording until 3:30 in the morning. But if you're on YouTube, I've got no other choice but to break this down a little bit. So we're going to go right now. What you're hearing right now is the lead off to the entire thing. But we're talking Dylan Carlson, and then there will be another separate video on the Brenden Schaeffer St. Louis Cardinals writer YouTube channel that I dissect all of the John Mozeliak quotes. I'm basically going to take this giant podcast and split it into two videos because it's the only thing that I know how to do when the Dylan Carlson thing for listeners of this show is such a huge thing. That deserves to be a video in and of itself. Because after the game tonight, Dylan Carlson spoke. And he spoke when there were TV cameras around. And then the TV cameras left. And then there were a handful of writers, myself included, that remained. And we've got some really good, candid thoughts from Dylan Carlson about the way the Cardinals have sort of yanked him around this year. He didn't make excuses. He didn't play the blame game, but he talked about it from his perspective and said, honestly, it hurts the way that he has been handled this year by the team. It seems like a guy that just has no idea. He is at a loss to explain what he's supposed to do. And this is going all the way back into the offseason where he came into spring training looking to improve against right-handed pitching, accomplished that in Grapefruit League play, and then out of the gate wasn't in the mix against right-handed pitching. And he regressed and has now really started to come on strong from both sides of the plate. When you look at the plate discipline he's showing, when you look at the consistency of his efforts since June 9th, really, coming back from the injured list when he had the ankle deal. Dylan Carlson's been playing some pretty good baseball under some very trying circumstances when you think about how many different guys have basically been given a crack at his job, the job that he demonstrated last season he could perform it pretty capably as the Cardinals center fielder. That was the whole conversation around the trade deadline when Harrison Bader goes to the Yankees, but Dylan Carlson remains, and Juan Soto, that deal doesn't come to fruition. And John Mozeliak publicly backs Dylan Carlson and said he's a guy that we want to build around, not using a trade to reorganize the roster. And that's fine. I think it's a good thing the Cardinals did not trade for Soto if the cost was what we expected it to have been, which is you're talking Jordan Walker, you're talking probably Nolan Gorman, you're talking probably whatever pitching the Cardinals could have offered up at the time in terms of prospects. And then you're talking Dylan Carlson on top of it all. Like, it would have been exorbitant. You look at what the Nationals have, you just got a glimpse at those players over the weekend. C.J. Abrams starting to come into his own. Mackenzie Gore is a really quality starting pitcher, a prospect that's turned into a young MLB talent that the Cardinals, they didn't have anybody like him to offer. And they've had some younger prospects as well that are still baking in the national system. That was going to be a painful deal if the Cardinals had made it. So I'm not conflating the two things, but from where Dylan Carlson was, and like the treatment from the organization toward Dylan Carlson has been a 180-degree turn over the past 12 months. It's jarring, the degree to which the Cardinals, like, they haven't thrown him under the bus necessarily, because anytime Ollie Marmol talks about him, is asked about Dylan Carlson, he has good things to say. The Cardinals haven't necessarily thrown Dylan Carlson under the bus and said negative things about him. It's their actions in essentially just not bothering to let him know that, hey, there's a bus coming, you should turn around. They haven't had to throw him there. The bus has hit Dylan Carlson and backed over him and then ran back over him going forward. It's happened a bunch of times this year. And it's the actions of the Cardinals that are doing that, but it's so hard to kind of ascertain and wrap my mind around when the words are saying about him. There's no like smoking gun of like Dylan Carlson stinks. This is why he's not playing, you idiot. Like they've never said that. Ollie Marmol has been complimentary. His Cardinal teammates have been complimentary of the job that Dylan has done. But it's like I'm in the twilight zone when it comes to the narrative surrounding this player and why it's okay to have Tyler O'Neill get to play center field and be bad at it, have Lars Nootbaar not have the instincts in center field of Dylan Carlson, and have Tommy Edman thrown out there, who, by the way, probably is the second best center fielder defensively on this team, but it's behind Dylan Carlson, and I won't hear slander to the opposite. I'll hear it. I just won't agree with you, right? It's okay for everybody to have their opinions. But it's just crazy to me. And offensively, I get that Dylan Carlson doesn't have power. I get that he hasn't displayed much power. But, he's 21 points behind Lars Nootbaar in OPS at this point. It's 726 after the night that Dylan just had. And Nootbaar's at 747. And Dylan Carlson is the better defensive center fielder than Lars Nootbaar. He just is. I like Lars Nootbaar a lot. But you cannot tell me that the slim difference in their productivity this season offensively is so substantial that one needs to be treated as untouchable, can't be moved, can't be considered. And again, I like Lars Nootbaar, but that's the narrative surrounding Lars Nootbaar from the Cardinals. And I understand it because he's a good player with upside, and I've continued to say he's above average at basically everything you can do on a baseball field. Lars Nootbaar can do it. But Dylan Carlson's being hung out to dry. And relative to Nootbaar, he's not mincemeat. He's not spam in a can. The Cardinals are going to make a colossal mistake, is the way I'm anticipating the next couple of weeks to go. Because there is a very good chance that Dylan Carlson is on another team come August 2nd. At this point, I don't know how you deny it. You could look through these tea leaves and try to find a favorable situation here for Carlson. And the way you do that is to say, well, of course, Tyler O'Neill has to come back and play, because if they don't play him, they can't trade him. They've got to build up some trade value of Tyler O'Neill before they can unload him. Maybe. But there's also the alternative reading of that where the Cardinals, they just cannot quit Tyler O'Neill. Tyler O'Neill can have 2 good weeks, and if he does, that doesn't mean he's getting traded. That means he's the guy now, which honestly could work out because Tyler O'Neill has a very tantalizing skill set. The problem is he's never available to use it. And this offseason, this past offseason, the whole entire winter for Tyler O'Neill was designed around improving his durability, being better in that department so that he would be available. He hasn't played since May 4th. I get it. There were different things that went on with his back. It was an unusual circumstance, and he went out and got a second opinion, had a long road to get back to here. And Tyler O'Neill is the kind of guy you root for. So I am going to really try hard not to denigrate Tyler O'Neill in the context of this conversation. But I do feel more the responsibility to advocate for Dylan Carlson in the fact that this guy, first of all, was a top 20 prospect coming into the 2020 season. Like MLB.com, I went back tonight and looked. He was ranked number 17. I believe he was ranked, it was either one spot ahead or one spot behind. I'll have to go back and check. But I think it was one spot ahead of Julio Rodriguez. Now, that was maybe fault of the rankers because Carlson maybe never had that upside of a Julio Rodriguez to be a power-hitting stud and all these things that Rodriguez can still probably become. But Dylan Carlson is a damn good baseball player, and like I said, I feel like he's being hung out to dry right now. So I have ranted. I have gone with the opinion. I have gone with sort of some context and background information here without ever once even plugging the podcast and the YouTube channel. Hey, guys, if you like Cardinals content, this is only the beginning. Tonight is only the beginning in terms of what we are going to get into over the coming weeks when it comes to this team's trade deadline. Because when I play the John Mozeliak audio after we wrap up the Dylan conversation, which, again, on YouTube, you'll need to go to another video. I'm posting 2. You'll have to find them. The John Mozeliak one may be like 10 a.m. I post that, give the first one a little time to breathe. I haven't decided what I'm going to do. But when I get finished with this, the Cardinals are then going to be making these moves over the next 2 weeks. I could say a handful of players are going to get traded, and I don't think that's enough. I got a DM tonight from my buddy Caleb, and he's like, over under 5.5 guys get traded from the Cardinals to other teams. And I thought, probably over, because I think all 4 pitchers, and I'll throw Chris Stratton into this, Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty, Jordan Hicks, Chris Stratton, at least 3 of those guys are getting moved. They have to be moved. They have to be. Unless the Cardinals don't lose a game until the trade deadline, you have to be exploring every avenue to trade these players because they are free agents to be, And guys, Cardinals fans, I'm telling you, they're not coming back. They are not re-signing. Maybe Jordan Hicks is a different story. I don't really know what his situation is going to be, what his preferences would be. Jordan Montgomery is not a Cardinal next year, period. Jack Flaherty, I would be highly, highly surprised. The comments from John Mozeliak today coloring that, to see Jack Flaherty back next year. But what that means is we're going to have a ton to talk about. So if you like Cardinals content, there are a lot of other places to go, and you should go to those as well. But you've got no reason not to be here too, because we are going to get into some really good Cardinals conversation over the coming weeks, breaking down the trades, breaking down the breakneck pace at which the Cardinals are going to try to retool their pitching rotation and their bullpen for 2024. Because this is a lineup, as they're demonstrating recently, that I think is pretty good. I talked about how it needs to be almost top 3 in MLB in order to overcome how bad the pitching is. And I don't think they're going to probably land top 3. But they're very well going to be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 offense by the time it's all said and done. They've got like 41 hits over the past 3 games, and they've won all 3 of them. And they're finally getting just like standard starting pitching. Good old 6 innings, 3 earned runs, quality starts. And they're coming around, but it's too little too late. And it's largely because of the pitching. So bottom line, the Cardinals have a lot of moves to make. We've got a lot of things to talk about here on B-Schaeff Daily. Make sure you click that subscribe button on YouTube for the Brenden Schaeffer St. Louis Cardinals writer YouTube channel. If this isn't the video or series of videos as we talk Dylan Carlson and we talk John Mozeliak waving the white flag, that's going to be kind of the title of the other video. If you don't want to subscribe after these 2 videos, you probably never will, but I feel like this is right up the alley of the Cardinals fans who have been saying for months, this season is over. Let's just see him admit it. And you know what? Today, John Mozeliak admitted it. Nolan Arenado was not happy about it. We'll play some audio from Nolan as well, because he basically said, screw that. I don't want to hear about we're looking to next year. I mean, he wasn't inflammatory, but he was on edge. I mean, you know Arenado. He gets after it, and he'll speak his mind, and he basically wanted nothing to do with any question about how they don't still have something to play for in 2023. So I'm going to play the Arenado stuff on the next video when it comes to YouTube. Spotify listeners, just buckle up, because this podcast will go over an hour, and you'll get all of it right here. But just want to throw that out there. Subscribe on YouTube. Check out B-Schaeff Daily on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well if you'd prefer to take in the show and the content via that form. And if you want to support me, the way to do it is patreon.com/bschaefer12. It's to do everything we've talked about. Subscribe on all the places you can, rate and review, that good stuff. But Patreon is out there as well. Patreon.com/bschaefer12. More content will come to the Patreon here this week, but it's not going to be Tuesday, because we've got a cram sesh with everything that we need to get out, because, I mean, multiple major stories happened on Monday. So let's start with Dylan Carlson. I said we would. I'm just going to jump right into the audio right now, because you're probably not hearing this anywhere else, given that it was just a handful of writers talking to Dylan Carlson after the cameras had left. You're going to hear Dylan Carlson's thoughts. You should read the stories. I wrote a lengthy one for KMOV with a lot of context in there that you got to check out. Others will be writing stories about it as well. But I want you to be able to hear from Dylan Carlson, because to me, he had the 1,000-yard stare. I'm not saying he was about to cry. I'm not saying he was even emotional, but he was a man that, to me, after helping the Cardinals win a game, he looked defeated at his locker, talking about just almost with exasperation what has gone on for him this season and how, man, for whatever reason, it hasn't gone his way. It's the phrase he used, but he used some others. So I'll go ahead and play the audio for you now. But let's start with a quick clip that we have from Mozeliak actually describing the situation when he was asked about Tyler O'Neill and his role coming back, whenever that should be, which honestly, it sounds like it's going to be Tuesday, but whenever that should take place. What's Tyler O'Neill's role? This is the kind of the catalyst for everything that we're going to be talking about. So we'll play that, and then we'll let you hear from Dylan Carlson from Monday night. Here's Mozeliak, though, on Tyler O'Neill.
He will likely be our everyday left fielder. In other words, that would be the plan, to have him out there every day.
And that holistic trickle down of that you've had guys in and out of DH. I know you want to do Jordan in DH, but Brenden couldn't throw.
Right. So, like, to answer O'Neill, I can. To answer the other, I can't, because it's going to depend on when others can come back, when they can throw. But, trying to get Walker playing time, obviously Newt playing time, of course, trying to figure out what to do with Dylan. I mean, these are similar challenges we faced in late April. But obviously Tyler's worked himself back to get here, and so we're going to give him that opportunity.
So it may not sound all that inflammatory at the expense of Dylan Carlson, but when you think about what's said there, do some math. Tyler O'Neill will be the left fielder. We're trying to get playing time for Newt, Barr, and Walker. And, of course, we got to figure out what to do with Dylan. That about says it all, doesn't it? And then he reiterates by kind of going into, well, it's similar to what we faced in late April. Well, what happened back in April was that Dylan Carlson didn't play a lot against right-handed pitching. Played against lefties, but he was a platoon guy. And now you get Tyler O'Neill some run to try and find him everyday opportunity. Jordan Walker has established himself, more established even than he was at the time, because he was about on his way out to Memphis in late April. I don't remember the exact date that took place, but the squeeze for Dylan Carlson is on. Despite 2 for 4 with 3 runs scored and a walk and an RBI on Monday night, and a great catch on Luis Arias to begin the game, Miles Michaelis raved about the catch and the ability by Dylan Carlson to play center field. None of it matters because, again, it seems like he's boxed out. And so he knows it. And we talked to him about it on Monday night after the game. Here's Dylan Carlson. You've been waiting for this, so I'll give it to you. A few minutes of the conversation that took place with Dylan Carlson in front of his locker after the game. A game that the Cardinals won over the Miami Marlins, by the way, 6-4, largely due to the contributions of Dylan Carlson. And he's asked here to begin this little portion of the audio that we'll play about whether he's gone through this before and the uncertainty surrounding maybe the playing time and also the notion of the trade deadline creeping up. And Dylan Carlson brings us back to about 12 months ago when, he went through this before, and it was very obvious and open that the Cardinals were not considering trading him, to the extent that, if you recall, John Mozeliak pulled him aside and told him, hey, you're not going anywhere. Don't worry about it. Keep your head up and go play baseball for us. We believe in you. That's the little pep talk that he got from Mo last year. This year, well, you'll hear in this clip from Dylan exactly where things stand now. Without further ado, though, because I've been delaying it long enough, here's Dylan Carlson from after Monday night's game.
I mean, there was a lot of stuff last year. We obviously didn't, include me in a deal, and that was a big thing with the fans and stuff. But for me, I try to keep my focus here in this clubhouse. I'd be lying if I say you don't hear that stuff. But the best thing for me is keeping my focus in here and being ready to play whenever my time's called upon.
Last year you got the call saying you wouldn't be included in it. Do you have those kind of conversations with Mo again, or?
There hasn't been much dialogue, truthfully. But obviously, with where we're at, we got to, start playing well and do some things to get back into it. So, it's just the nature of the game ultimately.
That's the first time I'll pause the audio real quick to kind of interact with it. Not much dialogue is what Carlson says about whether or not Mo has told him something similar this year about, hey, you're not going to be involved in deals, don't worry about it. Not much dialogue. Radio silence. The silence is deafening. I think it's that way for a reason, folks. You can read these tea leaves. I think there is a better than equal chance that Dylan Carlson is traded. And I'm getting to where I think it might be the best damn thing for him. Because, again, we'll kind of dive into it a little bit, release some of the tension here after finishing up with this Dylan audio. But you think about the number of guys that have had a crack at center field above him this year, and you look at his numbers, and they are, he's got a higher OPS than Tommy Edman, 100 points higher than Tyler O'Neill, 21 points below Lars Nootbaar, and to me is a more complete defensive player than all of them. And so if I'm Dylan Carlson, man, I'm looking around going, what do I got to do to get some of the same favor that my teammates have been afforded? But Dylan Carlson doesn't make any excuses here. He really doesn't. He's honest. He's candid about the way it made him feel. You'll hear it all. But the fact that he still lifts his teammates up and still has positive things to say and doesn't really, expresses the frustrations. He vents a little bit, but he's not making an excuse. He just says, look, I gotta be ready for my opportunity. So I'll stop talking about what he says and let you hear what he says. Here's Dylan, more of Dylan Carlson after Monday's game, which actually isn't Dylan because it's a clip that begins with a question asked by me. So here you go, more of me.
Dylan, knowing kind of that performance with a crowded outfield would dictate a lot of the way opportunities are divvied up, how do you evaluate your performance this season? Maybe some of the strides you've made compared to where you were last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. It's definitely been inconsistent. Felt really good coming out of spring. Didn't get an opportunity against righties, so that kind of stung, and just tried to do my best. Then all of a sudden was sprung into playing every day again. Yeah, it's been tough, but, as a competitor and someone who wants to be out there, I can't complain when I'm given the opportunity. Just got to be ready and run with it. But ultimately, I feel like I'm competing, doing the best I can, and just as prepared as possible. So from that standpoint, I feel confident, and, I feel like I'm ready to go.
But the confidence, too, come from kind of that backing that you've mentioned you've had at times in your career,
right,
of knowing, like, here's my expectation, here's what the role is going to be, and I can kind of take that and own it.
Right. I mean, there's there's no secret that when you have a more clear role and, more consistent role, guys are going to probably perform a little better. But, it just has been the case for me. I just got to stay ready and do what I can to help this team ultimately.
Yes, tough question to ask, tricky. You've only played for one organization, but you're a guy who wants to play every day. How do you handle that? How do you balance that? Obviously, you want to play every day, be in the lineup every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough. I mean, I feel like I can really help this team, but like I said, opportunities have been scattered, and it hurts, honestly. But I just try to do what I can to be ready for these guys, and ultimately, try to help us win as many games as possible. That's always been my goal ever since I got to the big leagues, is to help this team win as many games as possible. Mm-hmm. And, I always felt like my production and performance would come from that focus and being in that mindset. Mm-hmm. And, obviously with it being more limited and sporadic, I guess, it makes it a little harder. But yeah, I mean, I want to be an everyday player. I'm a competitor, and I'm someone who wants to be out there. I feel like I can do a lot of things. So, just when the opportunity's there, do what I can.
When you didn't get the opportunities early in the season, but then when you did, you produced. How much pride do you take in that of being ready and showing that you were ready?
Yeah, I take a lot of pride in it. It's real hungry. Tried to make the most of it, and I had an unfortunate ankle injury that, really you can't control. So ultimately just...
They said too.
Right, yeah, luckily we made it down there. But... yeah, it's tough, but, we got a lot of great guys in this clubhouse who, do a lot of great things and are great people, so it makes it a little easier.
There's Dylan Carlson from after Monday's Cardinals win 6-4 over the Miami Marlins. Carlson scored 3 runs, had a base hit from both sides of the plate, drew a walk, advanced first to third at least once. I think he did it twice. Great base running, great defensive play in center field. He had a very complete game. And man, is that just stepping up to the plate after what had happened in the afternoon. Because I don't know when the conversations would have happened with Dylan. Like, clearly the Cardinals, whether it was Marmol, Mozeliak, both, would have had to have had some discussions with him in recent days about how this is going to look. And honestly, putting him in the leadoff spot was like, here you go, Dylan. It's like your make-a-wish. This is your chance to be a real center fielder, even though we're just about to take it away from you here in a minute. But you enjoy it for today. But we just told you what the plan's going to be when Tyler comes back. And Dylan doesn't put down his teammates, doesn't say a negative word. Dude's a consummate teammate. He has been put through the ringer this year. Is he like the greatest hitter in the world? No, he's got a 726 OPS, all right? We can get real about what that is. But my thing is kind of, like I said, advocating for this guy. It's as though those kind of criticisms can only come to him. When it's Lars Nootbaar, there is no criticism. 747 OPS, that's good enough. And it's fine. 726 is fine too, though. Drawing more walks than games played over the last 2 weeks is good too. having a 842 OPS since he returned from the injured list on June 9th is pretty good. It was 814 before today. I did some rudimentary calculations. I think it's up to like 842. Dylan Carlson's OPS since the 9th of June. And don't give me the short sample size on the defensive metrics. I flat out don't believe him. I'm using my eyeballs to know that Dylan Carlson is the best defensive center fielder this team has. If that makes me an absolute square, I don't care. Watch the games. Dylan Carlson has instincts when it comes to playing center field. He's not the best athlete. He's not going to be the fastest foot speed guy. And that, I think that's what it boiled down to with the Tyler O'Neill stuff. They thought we could construct a center fielder out of the raw materials that Tyler O'Neill possesses. They were wrong. And it took them a while to realize it. But then after they did, it was like, well, now Lars Nootbaar's back from the injured list, so he can play some center. And now, well, Tommy Edman, let's put him in there because, I don't know. I guess it's his chance instead of Dylan. And so it feels like I have to be like over the top in the way I present Dylan Carlson. The way I talk about him, you guys are like, okay, dude, he's not an all-star. All right, let's cool it. And I get that. But I think fair is fair when it comes to like, no guy should have special treatment. They should be judged on the merits, right? And I feel like the merits of Dylan Carlson are maybe like 85%, 90% Lars Nootbaar, who I really like, by the way. Like, again, I like Lars Nootbaar. I think the Cardinals should keep him. I think he should be in that outfield for the next 10 years. But if Dylan Carlson is like 90% Lars Nootbaar, why is he being treated like 40% Lars Nootbaar? You know what I mean? If Dylan Carlson is 120% Tyler O'Neill, why is Tyler O'Neill being bestowed the opportunity again? I mean, they put it for him on a platter at the beginning of the season, Tyler O'Neill. And within 5 games, he was getting chewed out by the manager for not hustling. Again, it doesn't really matter what your take on that whole thing was. I'm also not trying to be anti-Tyler O'Neill here, but I can give you the numbers, and I can say, all right, if there's going to be one guy versus another that maybe has to strive a little extra for an opportunity here in late July, I would think that Dylan Carlson's the guy that's earned one. What chapped my khakis when it came to the Carlson stuff, and again, I was not at Busch. I've only been able to hear the audio, read some of the stuff that's been said. I don't have perfect context, and I'll tell you when my limitations are my limitations so that you guys are not misled by everything going on. I'll tell you what I know. I'll tell you what I don't know. I'll be honest about that. But John Denton had a tweet discussing what all the reporters at Busch Stadium had discussed when it comes to Tyler O'Neill getting the nod and Dylan Carlson basically being on the outside. This is a tweet from John Denton. Said, Manager Ollie Marmol said the starting outfield going forward, until the deadline at least, would be O'Neill, Lars, Nootbaar in center, and Jordan Walker in right. Ollie, quote, at the end of the day, everyone's gotten an opportunity and we can feel comfortable about that. End quote. That's BS, man. I don't have the context for that whole quote, right? So I'm not trying to rip Ollie. But at the end of the day, everyone's gotten an opportunity and we can feel comfortable about that. Dylan Carlson has only gotten an opportunity as a last resort. Every guy who had a chance to play center field ahead of him was either injured or needed elsewhere, and then they found Tommy Edman to be the next guy to do it. So you've now grabbed a starting shortstop, but that's a whole other thing because he got yanked around by DeYoung coming back. And supposedly DeYoung was going to be the utility guy, but then that was a JK. We didn't mean it. Tommy, it's you. Which, again, Tommy has more versatility than DeYoung, so I get it. It's just, it kind of is used against these guys who have that versatility. But when it comes to Dylan Carlson, man, they found every opportunity to give chances to other players. And I feel like they're like not, they've got it ingrained in their minds what Dylan Carlson is, because you could look early on in the season. Like, I can go through the game logs. His OPS earlier in the campaign wasn't good. He started off hot, but then almost immediately kind of faltered, fell off the map a little bit there. Yeah, from the very beginning, he had a 3-for-4 game 2 of the season. Didn't get to start on opening day, but game 2, they beat the Blue Jays. Or was that game 2 or game 3? Game 3. Yeah, Game 3, his first start of the year, he goes 3 for 4. Had a great OPS. But then it fell into like the 400s. He was 500s, 600s for the longest time. And then was kind of starting to find it a little bit when it got to the month of May. Like he had, I don't know, looking at this real quick, about a dozen, 13, 14 games played in May. Had a base hit in like 9 or 10 of them. Never had a multi-hit game, but he was scoring runs, getting hits, getting on base, driving in runs. The numbers were starting to come up a little bit, but then he got injured. And it was about a month, not quite a month, but May 14th to June 9th before he got back in there. And then from there, I mean, the OPS went from 629 to 726. So nearly a 100-point gain in 5.5 weeks or so for Dylan Carlson. He's been playing better, and I feel like they have ingrained in their mind what he was at the beginning of the year, what he was last year, and are ignoring reality when it comes to making these long-term plans. Like, Ollie Marmol had great things to say about Dylan Carlson after the game, but like the long-term plans have not been impacted at all by it. They still look at Dylan Carlson, they put him in this box, and they say, here's what he is. And that's fine. Trade him to the Yankees. See what happens. Do it. I think it would be fascinating to see it unfold. Because I saw tonight a Dylan Carlson who was given a chance to bat leadoff, even knowing all this was happening in the periphery. He's the leadoff dude, and he took ownership of that role. He took ownership of the center field role. Hashtag Everyday Dylan is a thing for a reason. It's because when you give guys opportunities, you heard Carlson say it. Yeah, a lot of times when guys know their role and it's going to be consistent, they'll tend to play better. But he said, what? Well, that just hasn't been the case for me. And he kind of laughed, knowing that there's probably nothing he can do about it. He can't change their mind if they've already made up their mind about him. And if they've done that and they really think that of the two outfielders, Tyler O'Neill and Dylan Carlson, the one to keep on the roster for next year and try to build around is O'Neill, that's fine. See what happens. Trade him. Trade Dylan Carlson and see what happens. See what he does. I hope he goes to a contender. I hope he gets to play every day. Like, that's what's so tricky about this. It very well may be the best thing for Dylan Carlson's career to be moved. And, yeah, he should have some trade value because he's got several years of team control remaining. He's versatile. He can play all the outfield spots. He's a good on-base guy. He's a switch hitter. He needs to demonstrate some more power to really reach the pinnacle of what people thought he could be when he first came up in 2020. But even without adding that next level to his power, which I still believe is something that would just come with consistent playing time, if you bestowed upon him the same level of trust that you did to Tyler O'Neill to begin the season, which I'm not going to say Tyler O'Neill did not earn that. He didn't really earn it in spring, but he was at the World Baseball Classic, so they didn't get a full look at him. And they knew 2021 happened, and they knew his 2022 was full of injuries, and so he earned it by demonstrating for a full season like what it could look like to have Tyler O'Neill. And so that upside is higher than Dylan Carlson's. But, man, the floor, I'm taking Carlson's floor every time. What do other teams think? Well, if you're going to trade an outfielder because you do need to get pitching, I think the better pitcher you're going to get for Dylan Carlson than Tyler O'Neill. So I'm not saying definitively that 5 years, 10 years from now we'll look back on it and say, oh, yeah, they clearly should have made this decision or that. We'll know then, but I don't know that we know now. Because for as much as the recency bias would tell you that Tyler O'Neill is, complete stay away, don't trust him to do anything, don't put him in your lineup, whatever, the raw ability has not departed Tyler O'Neill. He could easily play 10 times over the next 2 weeks and hit 6 home runs and just be an absolute fiend. He's got great speed. Like, he's got the full package other than being able to put it together consistently with health. So I am not trying to bemoan Tyler O'Neill. We could be singing a completely different tune in a couple of weeks. I just had to come on here and say, maybe for the last time, I'm pulling my hair out over this Dylan Carlson thing. I don't understand it. It's crazy to me, the direction that it's gone over the last 12 months after they were so much in his corner. Now he says, well, there's not really any dialogue about where I stand with this team. They trade me? Hell, I don't know. Ask him. I have no idea. They don't tell me anything. The communication from the Cardinals this year in a lot of different fronts has been poor. We've talked about that plenty of times. But I feel like John Mozeliak needs to have a conversation with Dylan Carlson. He says there's not been dialogue. So that tells me that Mo has put it all on Ollie Marmol to like say, hey, here's the deal. Sorry, kid. But you're back to a platoon role, defensive replacement role at best. Which, by the way, I don't know what that means, everyday outfielder, O'Neill, Nootbaar, Walker, because you got to find a way to get Dylan Carlson's bat in the lineup against lefties. He's too good against lefties. He's got like an 850 OPS against lefties this year. He was basically the same thing last year. You got to keep him in there for those situations. It might mean having to figure it out with the DH. It might mean Brendan Donovan goes on the injured list because it's going to be another week or so before he can throw. And they didn't put him in the lineup today, so what that tells me is they'll be able to backdate it to Sunday if they decide to go that route with Donovan. Just give him a week. He'll basically just have to miss a week of games plus like 1 or 2. And then he'll be ready right around the correct timing of getting him back out there on the field. And then you don't have to reserve a DH spot for him. Because, of course, you've got to reserve the DH spot for Wilson Contreras because he can't catch, evidently. Or he can't catch to the level of Ivan Herrera, who's done a nice job. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy the number of moves that are kind of causing other log jams and other issues for this roster. But I think Dylan Carlson is getting the short end of the stick on a lot of it, despite the fact that he's versatile. He can play any outfield position. He just doesn't have the StatCast power that you're looking for, and so they're happy to kind of ignore it and put him on the back burner. We'll see what happens with the trade. Could they be showcasing O'Neill? It's absolutely possible. But if Tyler O'Neill does hit those 6 home runs in 10 games, I have a hard time believing the Cardinals are going to go, see, now we can capitalize and trade him. No, I think they're just going to play him at that point. If you ask me the percent chance that Dylan Carlson is a Cardinal on August 2nd, I'm going to say 30% that he's still here, which means a 70% chance that he's not. I think he's one of the most likely guys on the roster to be traded through really no fault of his own, and whether or not that pans out or not for the Cardinals long term is going to be fascinating to watch. Because if you trade him for a AAA pitcher that's on the cusp of a rotation and you plan on having that guy in your rotation in 2024, or hell, by the end of July, you probably would have that guy in your rotation because Montgomery and Flaherty are going to be gone, and you're going to need arms, you're going to need innings. So if they trade for kind of an unproven guy, but a guy that's considered to have upside, Mo talked a lot today about, yeah, we need more swing and miss. We're looking for that kind of stuff in the pitching that we're looking to go out and get. Our model of playing for the infield defense to be elite and pitch to contact has not panned out, so we have to adjust more rapidly to the changing game. Let's get some strikeout guys in here. If they trade Dylan Carlson for a strikeout guy that gets hurt within 6 months or whatever, I mean, it's also predictable. It could go the other way. They could trade him for somebody that they desperately need, and the guy could fill a great role in the rotation. I don't know off the top of my head who that's going to be. But like I said, I am better than equal chance that Dylan Carlson is traded because that is the only logical conclusion I can draw at this point with the way that he's been handled by the team this year. So we'll see what that does. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to track it, though. It's going to be fascinating to look into it and see the way that it unfolds over time. But Cardinals fans, I want to hear from you. Let me know in the YouTube comments section, what do you make of the Dylan Carlson stuff? What'd you make of his comments specifically? And talking about the way that, yeah, it's hurt to see the sporadic opportunity and maybe not totally always know exactly where he stands. What do you think of those comments? Let me know on YouTube. Do you think Dylan Carlson is a Cardinal for longer than the next 2 weeks? A lot of interesting thoughts potentially to be had there from Cardinals fans, so I want to hear from you. YouTube.com/@B-Schaeffer12. Make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and leave your comments as it pertains to this Dylan Carlson situation.